Please welcome Aspen Institute Vice President and founder and executive director of Ascend at the Aspen Institute, Ann Mosle.
Oh my gosh. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let's let everyone know we are here. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so excited for the next few days to be in community and company and fellowship with all of you, to learn with and from all of you. And, first I always just want to start with gratitude. I really want to start with gratitude to each of you for all that you do every day. Sarah really shared with us last night how hard it can be to leave home, to leave community, to leave the really important work behind to allow yourself to be present. And so it's sort of funny, as I was reflecting on sort of our first Think Exchange, we're at the fifth. Fifth is fabulous. We had 9 Ascend staffers here. Today we have 23. And I don't know if they're all here, but if you can wave and be your fabulous selves. You're going to get to know them. Nice job, V. Throughout the program, they all are amazing leaders, and they have designed this experience for all of you with such care and such intention. And so I just hope you really take time to visit with them and get to know them, because they're all extraordinary. And as we all know, nothing happens by a single individual. It is always the collective. And so I just always have to express gratitude, of course, to the Ascend team, the Aspen Meadows entire team that are serving our foods, helping our rooms be ready, and all the other little things that make it possible. And so kind of jumping into this, we're in a powerful moment. We're really at a collective inflection point with what the world's calling us for. And I would love us to really step into both our individual and our collective power and trust. Power can be for good, it can be for bad, but it's how we decide to use it. And trust, we all know that nothing great is by one person, one organization, one sector, if we're going to make the seismic change that is in our hearts and our minds and is possible. But to stay away from the turf trap and just jump full-throated into the trust possibility. And when I think about last night, I really wanted to bring in the power of last night's conversation. As my daughter, who's 24 now, and she was 10 when I came to Aspen to found Ascend, yikes, generational change. She always said to me, Mom, lived experience, that's actually a big deal. It is such a duh factor. It is so essence, it is so obvious. And when I think about the wisdom last night that we heard, I put my head on the pillow last night thinking about some of the comments, and I really, Micah, I don't know where Micah is this morning. Micah, you really asked the ultimate question, because when we think about the change we're making in the world, we always have to be having that conversation with ourselves. And your words of, when I'm asked a question, often my first response will be, what has society trained me to answer? My second response is what I authentically value. You challenged us to say, let's really keep our curiosity alive and well and not sort of check our biases at the door. Because when we look at this room of 200 extraordinary leaders from 34 states, the diversity of our experiences, our identities, our cultures, there's so many factors that make us who we are. We know without question diversity is our strength. It is an asset. And the fact that we have that together and inviting that curiosity, let's stay super open in the next couple days. Jesus, where are you? Yay! This is where it's great to be on time. Note to file. We're paying attention. But, in Jesus, he really called out something that I think a lot about, both really knowing our formal and our informal power. Now, he talked about, I'm not leaving any brothers or sisters behind that are thinking about their pathway to their post-secondary success, whether it's formally or informally when they're ready. and when they're not, but I'll come back. And we all have formal and informal power. Now, where's Tamika? All righty. So Tamika Henry, who has been on the journey from pretty close to day one, I thought, it's really, it's a great question to be like, what is your advice for like program delivery? But your journey really talks about advocacy and transformation, not only from beloved Head Start, but into the public square. And as you're doing your second run for the school board, God love you, that is courage leadership. In Clark County, Nevada, that is bold, courageous leadership to say, I'm going to transform how education is happening in Las Vegas. And then Micah, you kind of, no, Mr. All, you closed us out with something that I think is always like, it's a starting point for all of us. You invited us all to remember, where's Mr. All? Okay, right there. To really stay connected to our calling, It's in all of us. And those were just a few of the highlights when I think about as we kick off these days, our calling, our curiosity, our power, informal and otherwise, and both the public and at the community level, like the public and the private kind of leadership spaces we find ourselves in. And so kind of jumping in here, the last little bit to kind of get us into kind of, let's let go of the outside world for a little bit and let us have the experience that individually we need and collectively. The first night I got here on Monday night, I was having dinner with a dear friend and longtime colleague, Paula Sammons. Is she here? Rock on, Paula. We were sitting and having dinner. It'd been a long day of travel, and we were catching up about some board stuff, some strategy stuff. And all of a sudden, and we were over at the restaurant at the West End Social, Amber, our waitress, came by and she said, get up, there's a comet. And I'm like, really? Come on, we're talking about some serious stuff. Paul and I are like, really? And all of a sudden, like the whole restaurant kind of pops up, and we went outside and saw this comet. This comet, which is extremely rare to see a comet that is visible to the eye, happens every 80,000 years. Like, look out. There's a chance if you look out tonight, there'll be a few more days here in Colorado, you might see it. But it was just the power of disrupting what you think you got to do and you're in it to just look up. And the scientists describe a bright visible comet like this as it's a newcomer to the inner solar system. And so when I think about everybody who's in this room, some it might be your first time here at Think Exchange or Aspen Meadows. Some of you might have been here every single time. But we're all newcomers to the solar system that we're building together. So, my last part on just setting the stage is, Sarah, the readings that were in part of the gift to you all as you came here, and some of you might have had time to read it, some of you may not. But I wanted to just call out a few words from Adrienne Marie Brown from the Emergent Strategy. Whenever you are beginning this, take a deep breath and notice how you feel in your body and how the world around you feels. Take a deep breath for the day you have had so far, and a breath for this precious moment which cannot be recreated. Now another for the day and the night coming. Here you are in the cycle between the past and the future, choosing to spend your miraculous time in the exploration of how humans, especially those seeking to grow liberation and justice, can learn from the world around us how best to collaborate, how best to shape change. And I just think those are some powerful words for us as we're getting started. Now, just to make sure you all think you're at the right place, one of the things, as I said, we have such diversity and power and leadership in this room, 34 states, different sectors, strategies, and so forth. But what brings us together is shared purpose, shared passion, and shared principles. In a world that is cacophonous and full of conflict at best, what we have is unity and diversity towards shared purpose and passion and curiosity and care. And so we always think about in our work, we're always grounded in values. I'm sure you all know the Ascend values. I hope they resonate with you. But just a few hits, embracing a mindset of abundance. We reject scarcity. We reject the false frame of who's deserving and who's not. Equity is our moral center. We honor lived experience, and together we will go farther. Now, these 5 guiding principles of 2Gen, I'm not going to even read it, because if these are not embedded in your heart and your brain, you need to see Marjorie Sims as fast as possible. Always Marjorie. Now, at the part where we're thinking about sort of this 2Gen inflection point, we just took a step back on just even looking over the past 10 years from 2014 to 2024, where we are now. And, you know, it's been a decade of innovation, implementation, and impact with great intention. And I don't know where my dear friend Nisha Patel is, who hope this will all resonate deeply also with you, who was there from the very beginning in a lot of different ways and still is part of the movement going forward, big time. There are no sidelines. And so when we just think about the power of 2Gen, sort of a then and now look, and these numbers are only just part of the story. But when we think, we started with an early intention around lived experience and the importance of engaging those most proximate, parents, caregivers, and also recognizing families are structured how they define themselves. We are now 130 parent ambassadors strong. You saw 4 here. We could have a whole conference, just turn off the lights and go. But that is powerful, but it is also not just those 130. It's also transforming how we do governance, how we do decision making, and how we have better solutions. The network from the 58 original to now 580 network partners in all 50 states, Puerto Rico, DC, tribal communities, is also growing globally. Rwanda, Guatemala, United Kingdom, Ireland, and so forth. And then 20 Ascend Fellows, now 162, and growing rapidly. But bringing that all together is part of the power of the movement, and there's more we could share. Now, as we think about, again, we're like in a little bit of a moment politically, and we will have a safe, healthy, peaceful democracy election and going forward. But when we think about this, 2Gen is a transcendent American value. These are not my words. These are Celinda Lake's words and a team of bipartisan pollsters that we have worked with for over 12 years. Okay, polling is like plus or minus, is it accurate? The level of depth that we have tracked this over time that shows across, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, 76% of voters believe that a 2-generation approach is an effective, common sense strategy to building family, economic mobility, security, and well-being. And just by the nature of the states that we've worked with at a policy level, at a community level, we have more calls than we can answer from red, blue, and purple states. We are coming from strength. You're going to hear a lot more as we're going into solutions and breakthroughs, especially highlighting some of the best practices and ideas coming out of the 2Gen acceleration community. Shout out, I don't know if Trenae Hawkins has made it in yet from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. But we have had a great partnership with Robert Wood as they have been a leading health foundation to say we need to think about not just health, but economic well-being. And so when you look at these 15 accelerator community partners, you'll hear more. There was one thing as I was really flying out here thinking about this. I was looking at, say, like Jeremiah, Lyft, UTEC, and Valley Settlement. The story that may or may not come out on the stage, but was really not just sort of community-led and with their parents and the people on the front lines. They've moved from community-led to like, we are the community. That's a powerful shift, as well as have gone through really intentional leadership transitions. We will all not be standing in the same platform, perch, or role over time, but thinking about how organizations, on the ground, anchor innovators, are able to grow over generations is a very powerful, and that's something I actually think there's a book in there. Okay, so leveraging change capital, making the most of capital in all its form. We have been working for a host of time really thinking about the power of capital. And this is one, change capital. It came from, we need to change capital, as well as have change capital. And we need to think about all its forms. So hopefully some of you had a chance to read a chapter for a major report we'll have coming out in the future. And I welcome comments and thoughts from it. always. But one of the part that I really had to take a step back and look at is we really need to change the formula, flip the script on how we think about change capital. Putting human capital first, intellectual capital second, and then social capital. Those three components are transformational. And when we think about its ability to be a power transformer that can ignite community system policy change, we know power is defined as the ability to act or produce an effect. And make no mistake that everyone in this room, you are the DNA of this power shift. And the effects that we have seen over time are measurable, they are quantifiable, and it's $1 billion value proposition. And we are seeing the kind of economic reverberations, civic vitality, and fundamental shifts to create a new generation of family-serving organizations with their strategies, culture change across all sectors. And truly in this room, it's your human, intellectual, and social capital that needs to be driving the future of the financial equation so that we are blending and braiding this new foundational force to make the change that we want and we know the world needs to see. When I think back, and I'm thinking always about kind of, oh, maybe it's 2030 or 2040, the historians of that time, the families and the policymakers of the future will look back at this 2-gen movement and your work as the time that the trajectory and the possibilities for families shifted, when mindsets expanded and embraced the possible. We and you were future-proofing before it ever became a new term. Future-proofing, look ahead, look for the signals. Ascend was created to build a different future. We have yet to achieve the American dream. And when we think about this and we look at families' resilience, cohesion, and our unwavering belief that all families deserve to realize their full potential, this is what this is about. And Janine McCone, who is not here with us, but she was an early parent advisor with us from the state of Connecticut, she raised the bar and changed the game. You know, people used to aspire to, like, let's meet families where they are. That's too low. We need to meet families where they dream. And so when we did the 2-gen investment case, we really wanted to capture where we're seeing examples how change capital has come into play. And so at the heart, this is like sort of my big question, and I've been in and out of philanthropy, working at privileged places like the Aspen Institute, or doing grassroots kind of real community work. But truly, imagine what would be possible if we flipped the script in the paradigm from mission having to chase money to money fueling mission. Imagine money fueling mission. What could be possible? And so when we did the 2-gen investment case, and this really started as a back of the envelope. I mean, anybody who knows me a little bit, I'm always tracking, always creating maps. I'm like trying to make meaning of this. And we were presenting to the board of the Institute trustees about the impact we were having. And I was like, okay, back of the envelope, it was documented, it did have proof points. But I had an easy $350 million. So of course, my dear friend Marjorie Sims is like, okay, we need to really document this and back it up. And working in partnership with many of you in the room and a 2-gen funder learning and action community, we did a deep dive to really go into, let's see where the capital has moved. And there's a conservative estimate. It is conservative because even since it started, we've already tracked another 80 million, and there's more. So keep bringing it in. But of financial capital that has been unlocked to fuel and fund 2-gen human, social, and intellectual capital and the ideas we need. In the federal government, 114 million, whether that was seen in the Department of Labor's work around reimagining workforce, early childhood, community anchor organizations, or the great work of Asia Schomburg when she was at the Department of Health and Human Services to reimagine child welfare to child and family well-being and bring in parent voice, to rural impact. but in 7 states. States are a huge sweet spot for us, and I think it's even more important going forward. 273 million unlocked in states that are doing 2-gen informed actions. And that's not even taking into account innovations like in Georgia, where they have the first 2-generation leadership academy, which is a whole new professional development strategy that has the ability to transform the human services workforce. And then the private funders from philanthropy, 200 million, but looking at from the research to the proof points. And so we just look at some of those numbers. They tell part of the story, but when we release the report, as you would expect from Ascend, you have a compendium of examples of roadmaps and the stories and the lessons learned. And so the headline for us is we are in a position of strength, we are in a position of power, and we are a unifying force for a world that is aching for it, but actually doesn't know how to do it. And so from where we are now to where we need to go, you'll be seeing this and have a chance to play with this in some of the sessions, but it is an invitation. We are not playing small. It is time for all of you and all of us to take center stage, be that in our city, our state, the communities that we work, or at the national level. And this is both a call for, it's a short-term game and it's a long-term. And so the team and I are really looking at what's 2025 going to look like, but our eyes are on the prize for 2030. And so when we think about this, these are just a few of the kind of concrete points that we really want to put a stake in the ground on. We will be doubling down on values-based leadership. Leadership lies in this room and in all of you. Sure, it's with our fellows, it's with our parent advisors, but not only are we looking at our fellowship and really redefining what future leadership looks like, because one thing we knew in the beginning, there's an abundance of leadership and it reflects the full diversity, imagination, and brilliance of our country. Our world is not necessarily looking to those leaders for their answers, and if we don't start flipping that script, we're going to get the same inadequate answers and responses. But really, we have a proactive, positive agenda. And so advancing a 2-gen policy agenda and portfolio of solutions, that is at the heart. And it's about taking a lot of the intellectual capital, the best practices that we all have here, to package them into a powerful national, family-centered agenda. And when we look at moving that, because we will have that peaceful, healthy, safe election, and like we know for all the presidential elections we have, there comes a time when there are it's a season of promises. Child care tax credit, child care this. This is as old as time is. It is how any elected leader is following up on those promises. And so for us to be ready with our agenda, which we know from early childhood, birth justice, workforce, health and well-being, housing, we have the solutions in this room. And Ascend has always had a very sweet spot for the states. Because states, especially as a policy lever, are where budget decisions, policy priorities are set, are implemented, and there is room for accountability. And also when we think about states and local communities, be they cities, municipalities, and counties, that's also where the work is happening. And so this is something, when we think about entering 2025, being ready with our proactive, positive agenda for families, backed with all of you, lifting up the intellectual leadership and the ideas and the people who've been on the front edge, this is a huge opportunity. And just also keeping it really zeroed in, and we've been working with this and seeing this, this one's easy. Challenging all 50 governors, and this is sort of a Q4 2025 goal, to have created a family council that is going to help them be better governors, help agencies do better work. But this is something we've seen in philanthropy happening, we've seen it happen in organizations, but let's just make it the reality. And then we'll also go up and we'll go down. So we're also happy to partner with our lovely Tanja Rucker at the National League of Cities, but also our partners there to make sure every mayor or every municipality, this is a no-brainer. And then lastly, when I talk about the billion-dollar proposition, this is one where it's sort of like how we are mobilizing resources. There's been a lot of public-private partnerships that have happened over time that are really good and a lot of lessons learned. But if we don't center it with also community and community solutions and public-private, we're leaving capital on the table and possibility. And so this is something really, one of the greatest joys I've had over the past kind of 10 plus years is really also working with some of the leaders who are leading the public sector health and human service agencies at the federal level, the state level, and at the county level. Because a lot of those leaders, they're controlling billions of dollars, but they only really get a lot of attention sometimes when something goes really, really wrong. But when we look at those mission leaders that are courageous, that are saying, I'm going to take the public sector, that inside strategy, and I'm going to partner with the community and with parents and caregivers in a new way, that with the trust and the values, we have a chance to transform and really go big with then how are we setting this agenda and then bringing in the private sector and otherwise. And so when we think about this work and the opportunity ahead, we've got to make sure that we're also going for the long term. And so we have about 30 funders that are here with us at Think Exchange. And you know, that philanthropic lever, philanthropy is really good. It's seed capital and it's risk capital. A lot of people think risk capital is like what can go wrong. I think about risk is what goes wrong if we don't do this. And so how philanthropy can help be there in that sweet spot, but then also partnering with government and the public sector at the onset so that we have shared vision, goals, and North Star. And our North Star is always going to be intergenerational, family economic security, educational success, and well-being, and changing the power equation so that also families are at the table for decision-making, designing, and also on the leadership pipeline. And so this, my friends, is not project work. This is life-changing work. And it is time for us to build a two-generation campaign of change capital that this country has never seen before, because the leadership that's going to make it happen is here in this room, and we will do it collectively. And so, again, I thank you all for all that you have been doing, and even more importantly, I cannot wait to see what we're going to all do collectively, and it's going to go from 2025 on to 2030, because we're here now. 2025, we have 36 gubernatorial elections, 28 another presidential. We know what's constant, and we are ready to weather and to thrive in what's coming forward. So let's get into the meat of the day and also start playing with our curiosity. And so change happens at the pace of relationships. And going back to Micah's words of stay curious, check your biases. When I think about the next panel coming up, I will confess that I am a healthy skeptic of AI. And so I am just so jazzed to keep being challenged to be more curious and to think about this work in new ways. And you know, one thing I think about AI, the future of the internet, and the challenges, I think for me one of the big questions is how to make sure AI doesn't just work for 8 billionaires, it's working for 8 billion people. And how are we also thinking about different models of how this could have better services and possibilities? But let us be clear on shared purpose and passion and principles. And so we have an extraordinary new friend, and I'm going to have to get my little notes here, but Nyla, I've been thinking all about you. But Nyla Budo, who's going to come up and moderate this incredible conversation. She is an exciting and influential journalist here in our country. She has recently taken on the role as the daily at Axios Today, where every morning she does a 10-minute podcast to distill the most complex issues happening in our country, to get them into digestible forms for us to take forward into our lives. And in addition to her work at Axios Today, she is a Knight Wallace Fellow. Her distinguished career started at the Miami Herald, where one of her first stories was covering Hurricane Andrew. Okay. She's continued on to do really powerful work in the state of Illinois, looking at issues like the Rust Belt and the impact it has on the lives of sort of working families and people in the Midwest. She has a background, not only sort of a curiosity, I think, when I think about your, your work from your BA in Grand Rapids at Calvin University, to then also her master's both at Florida International University and Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism. She's held important leadership positions for the American Association, the Asian American Journalist Association, but she has really been looking at storytelling, telling the news from platforms at state level, community level, to nationally. And we are just so grateful to have you here, Nyla, to lead this conversation and to change the skeptic mind. Thank you for unlocking the power of AI. Thank you so much.